The Climate Justice Charter movement has opened a case of culpable homicide against President Cyril Ramaphosa and other government entities. In addition to the president, people cited in the docket are ministers, the deputy chair of the Presidential Climate Commission, the KwaZulu-Natal Premier and the mayor of eThekwini. Now, the justice activists say the suffering endured by communities in KwaZulu-Natal, where over 400 people have died, is not a natural disaster, but it is due to negligence. To explain their stance, we are joined now by Climate Justice Charter activist Janet Solomons. Janet, good to have you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So let's get a better understanding. Why is the Climate Justice Charter going after the government on this one?
Well, we're saying that the government's obviously not taking the climate crisis seriously, and that it must be held accountable for its dereliction of duty. And there's a twofold issue here. If there is decent and effective disaster risk management planning, we're not seeing the rollout of it, and it's ineffective. And the second thing is that we have a government who is pursuing oil and gas and fossil fuels, and it has been well aware of the, it's a signatory to the intergovernmental panel on climate change, and it's signed off on their 6th report, which has been very clear about climate shocks and the urgency for action. And we're saying that it's culpable homicide because it's acts of negligence. So as an offence, eventualis is an indirect form of lethal intent. Where you know that something that you're going to do is going to kill somebody, and you carry on regardless. And the science is there to say that we could have the entire country hooked up on renewable energy within about 6 years. And yet it's not only continuing on the fossil fuel trajectory, it's actually escalating it with a push for 30 new oil and gas, oil wells offshore. And we're saying this is criminal behavior.
So, okay, let's have a look at it even more. I mean, when we look at a definition of culpable homicide, it's neglect and an unlawful killing of another human being. So, but I mean, does this put into consideration natural disasters? I mean, because one would argue that this, albeit climate change is a very big issue, and we do understand that. This was a natural and unforeseen disaster. I mean, do you agree with that position, or do you think that this could have been completely avoided had government moved faster on issues regarding climate change?
So I disagree with you in the sense that it's not unforeseen, it's foreseen, and the climate science actually says that this is going to be the best of the disasters going forward. These disasters are going to escalate. And we'll be seeing a lot more of them almost on a yearly basis. And we've already started to see it in KZN, and our coastline is completely vulnerable, not only to flooding, but also with rising sea levels. There needs to be planning and mitigation and adaptation for that. So we're saying it was foreseen. Could it have been completely mitigated? Obviously not. There was a huge amount of water that came out the sky. But, from simple things, from stormwater system clearance, etc., none of this stuff is being implemented. And we're saying this could have been avoided.
So are you also looking at, sorry for interrupting, but Are you also looking at the downfall of infrastructure that perhaps was not good enough to handle this, the roads perhaps not being strong enough, housing that was not adequate? Are those the kind of arguments that you're adding in, as well as a climate change argument? So it's quite a big one.
Yes, of course. Climate needs to be centralized to all government policy and planning. We've been aware of this for a long time now. And disaster risk management, the apex of that is the president, and then you've got the premiers, and then you've got the mayors, and then it moves down into government. And each one of those public servants needs to be working with climate as central to everything that they do. Mm. Otherwise, people are going to be dying.
South Africa always talking a good game when it comes to climate change. And certainly, we see the Presidential Climate Change Commission. We see South Africa hosting a number of conferences and events when it comes to climate change and being a part of climate change and, trying to say the right things. But let me ask you this, are we doing the right things? That I think is a much more important question.
Of course, and this is the whole point of what we're doing here. The rhetoric, we speaking green, we talking green, and yet we have this enormous push for fossil fuels. So that in itself is schizophrenic, and it needs to be addressed. We could be getting hands busy and working towards a just transition. We're not seeing the just transition on the table. We're not seeing governments planning for a just transition. And also, with regard to this risk management, hands could be busy adapting cities and planning, formalizing informal settlements. Hands could be very busy preparing for what's to come. So, yes, the rhetoric has to stop and we have to start seeing the action.
Okay, so very quickly, just to wrap things up, talk to us about the steps that are taking place now. Obviously, there's this the fact that you are going to be taking steps against, which are the other cabinet ministers. I know President Cyril Ramaphosa is the also one that we've mentioned in this, but you say other cabinet ministers. What's the next step? What are you going to be doing?
We're waiting for the police to get back to us. I'm still waiting for a case number, and then we'll pursue this. It's a test. We've had legal advice, and it's a test now to see whether the links between climate action and climate justice can link into our democracy and our legal system. So it's a test all round on this, and we're going to take this as far as it will go.
All right. Other countries, have they ever done this? Because I don't think we're alone in this issue of climate change. Have you seen something like this happen in other countries before?
Sure. Obviously the youth. There've been various youth movements that have taken their governments on, and certainly also against corporations. But I'm aware of some in Australia, America, and in Holland, so in the Netherlands. So, there is precedent for this, and I think it's exciting times in terms of seeing what leverage this can achieve.
All right, climate justice activist Janet Solomon's discussing why the justice activist movement has opened a culpable homicide case against the government, and the movement's view is that the KwaZulu-Natal tragedy is not a natural disaster, but is due to negligence. Right, we'll wait for that case number to be given and see the next steps with regard to that case.